Okay. We'll see how far this goes. Hopefully it stays there. It feels like it's gonna tip back. Okay. So picking kind of up where we left off last class with the linguistics, learning about the phonemes, phonetic transcription. All right, so just as a review, how many of you can translate?
Have you been
overly concerned with sound lately?
Yeah.
There you go. So this is when you take the test. I feel like some of it's going to be like this. What makes sense, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today too, is the fact that your brain wants it to make sense. So if you've ever seen those things on Facebook where it, like the words are flipped, the letters are flipped backwards, or it's missing things, but you can still read it, and they'll say like, only geniuses can read, right? Or only one out of so many people can read what this says. That's not true. Your brain wants to make sense of what you're reading. That's why I think as teachers we can read, especially if you've ever graded an AP exam. Kids will come up to you like, can I type this? I'm so sorry, my handwriting's terrible. I'm like, you don't worry. I can read about anything. I feel like sometimes I should work for the FBI.
Phonetic description of annoying noises teenagers make. Breathy voice, long, low back, unrounded vowel with advanced tongue root. Oh. Glottal stop, reduced mid-central unrounded vowel, long glottal fricative. Or, add at the beginning an alveolar click with unreleased velar coarticulation. Creaky voice, long alveolar glide with mid-front unrounded vowel and glottal stop. Yeah. Yeah. Voiceless velar affricate. Voiced alveolar stop and breathy voiced low back unrounded vowel, sometimes with advanced tongue root. Duh. Ending with a diphthong, ending with a high front vowel. Duh. Glottal fricative and breathy voiced mid-low central unrounded vowel, repeated.
That one was creepy.
Pulmonic ingressive nasal velar trill.
He's got too much time.
Voiceless labialized uvular fricative.
Ooh.
Thank you. So as I was watching this, all I could think of is somebody needs to do this to Cardi B.
Yeah.
Could you imagine her?
Oh my
right?
gosh.
My kids were, somebody said something the other day and I laughed and I was like, oh, who are you now? Cardi B. And the rest of the hour, all I heard were these bizarre sounds. Like, sorry I even brought her up.
Oh my goodness.
She's so annoying, I can't hardly stand her, but obviously she's won a place in their hearts. Okay, so today we're going to apply knowledge of phonics to teaching practice, and we'll have some partner discussion as needed. All right, quick quiz. To review chapter 4, we covered this last week. An L pronouncing father as fodder is pronouncing A, B, or C.
C. C. That's what I think.
Did I really not say it? Yeah, C. A fricative is a stop. So instead of saying father, right, which is your, I should have written all the answers down. The, which is the little funny circle with the X, right, on top.
Yeah.
They're making that, which is a, let me know what that is.
It's supposed to be a fricative. The,
Right, as a stop.
yeah.
Yes, so is pronouncing a fricative as a stop. I'm sorry, never mind, that's the correct answer. It's the next one. A student pronouncing sheep as cheap is struggling with a. And on, you're looking, if you want the symbols,
Yeah.
98 and 99.
I forgot what's an affricate.
That's the ch and j.
Okay.
Cheap.
So that means it'd be B affricate. Right?
Would it be
So this question confused me
Fricative?
by the way it's written. So, is it mean because sheep is a fricative,
Yeah.
is he having a problem with the fricative? Or is because he's saying cheap, is he having a problem with the affricate?
Right.
So you could read the question either way, as long as you understand what it is that you write. I mean, it means the same thing, depending on how you look at it. Because the ch and the j are affricate.
Yeah.
Sh. Is the fricative. So are we having problems with, I'd say he's having problems with both, because he doesn't know, the student doesn't know the correct answer. Right, so again, fricative, right? Fricatives are your, the, s, sh. And your affricative is the ch, like watch, t, ch, or judge. I would say that they're struggling with their fricative because instead of sh, they're saying ch. They're using an affricate or an affricate instead of the fricative. And last but not least, you have to listen carefully because I had to listen to it like 3 times. So you're being asked to identify in the video clip, what is Inspector Clouseau pronouncing as, this is the,
The TH voiced.
Okay.
The.
so how is he pronouncing the, or the sound, not the, but the sound. So that's what you're looking for.
So obviously it's not TH.
Correct. Oh, where's my mouse?
Its name is
So 43.
idiots.
Toto. What?
Nothing.
You didn't say steps a cow. Dear God, I beg of you, steps a cow. Steps a cow. Dear God, I beg of you, steps a cow.
Z. Z.
Yeah, the Z, right? Stop the car. So, it's hard when you're thinking about the language from an English perspective to think about how, if I put a Z in front of EE or a TH in front of EE, that it would make, right, Z does not make any sense. THE or ZE, I guess. But when you say it that way, Z car, do we know what he really means? Right. So our brains want to naturally make that connection, but if the sounds mean something different to them, they're not going to make that connection. Co-articulation occurs when two phonemes, are produced or articulated in the same place in the mouth. Which word is not an example of co-articulation? I felt like the additional part is more confusing, but... So when we're talking about co-articulation, we're talking about nasals, okay?
Would it be ramble?
So, ramble comes from the same part of the mouth. Catnip comes from the same part of the mouth. Serpent.
Because of the P.
So you're looking for two phonemes, two sounds that come from the same place in the mouth. So bull come from bull. It's change. Right. They give you a really long description about if you put your tongue here and you put your teeth together.
Yeah.
Right. So catnip are coming from the same parts, but serpent. Okay, so serpent is not an example of co-articulation. And these are the ones that they have a lot of trouble with. So if you hear, especially little children too, and little kids who have maybe had tubes in their ears or haven't had tubes in their ears, oftentimes will add sounds. Something, right? They add the sound to it because it's a natural, they don't know when to stop. They don't, right? They make the sound without. Phonatics, which I kept trying to say phonetics earlier. Probably corrected myself. Linguistic term for possible phenome combination is phonatics. Which of the following combinations does not exist in the onset in English?
THL, right?
Yeah.
It's thwarted.
Thwarted, thwack, I guess that was the first one that came, and like thrash, throw. But yeah, the thul does not make. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean in other languages that those phonatics don't exist, and that's why Spanish, not just Spanish, but so when you think about Spanish, in Spanish, one would say Susana or San Antonio. But the words for Spain, school, and Spanish, in Spanish, start with an E. So, España, escuela, español. What is the phonactic rule that describes the need for E?
Yes. E.
Yes, because escuela doesn't have it. So that, if you've ever had a student who adds the E to the beginning of a word, that's because in their language, in Spanish, that there's a phonactic rule that says if, all right. Okay, devoicing. Oh wait, that's just a video. Oh, that's not a video. So this is in your. This is the one that I gave you guys last class. Talks about the translation. Okay. So, when you devoice a sound or devoice a phoneme, so back, bag. Again, if you've ever listened to someone speak another language, like you feel like you might have a grasp on the language, and then they start speaking, and you're like, "Whoa!" Right? It sounded like you just said the same thing multiple times, or if you've misunderstood someone, part of that could be when they devoice the sound. So, for example, a Spanish. Okay. In Arabic, floor equals filor. I don't know why that's like that. Egyptian. Egyptian Arabic, and then iflor. So filor and iflor, both Arabic, different variations. This is like the joke, right? Fleischweiss. Germans and or I think Germans and Russians, do they invert the V and the W? Okay, same concept. I'm going to give you guys another resource here in a little bit. But this lady, Rachel's English, so for you, Evelyn, this would be a really good resource because I say that, I couldn't always hear the difference, but she goes through and will kind of give you some rules to help. I don't know, I guess I didn't actually save that as a hyperlink. For you to hear, to help hear. So in this video, she's going to talk specifically about voiced and devoiced, or not. Voiced and devoiced. I'm actually recording. Copy. Try again. She has a whole website.
In this American English pronunciation video, we're going to talk about ending voiced versus unvoiced consonants.
So last week when you guys were talking about, like, we were practicing saying and then trying to figure out which...
In American English, we have voiced and unvoiced sounds. All vowels are voiced. All diphthongs are voiced. Consonants can be either voiced or unvoiced. Unvoiced consonants are made just with air, no sound from the vocal cords. For example, sh, t. Voiced consonants do have voice in them, like b, j. B, j. There are lots of consonant pairs where the mouth position is the same, and one is voiced, the other is unvoiced. For example, ch, j. Every once in a while, I'll get a comment on a video asking about the pronunciation of these paired consonants at the end of a word. These come from people with a good ear that pay attention to what they hear. Mostly they say, I don't hear a voiced consonant, I hear an unvoiced consonant. They're right. We're going to get into a topic here that is quite advanced. It deals with subtle differences of sound. Let's take, for example, the word flowers. In IPA, we spell that like this. The ending consonant is the Z sound, which is voiced. But actually, that kind of sounds like an S at the end, doesn't it? Flowers. A really weak, light S. It doesn't have a strong S. Flowers. That's not correct. But it also doesn't have a strong Z. Flowers. Z. Flowers. It actually has a very weak S. Several years ago, I was reading an old pronunciation book, and it said how in these voiced, unvoiced pairs, the unvoiced is strong and the voiced is weak. I didn't really know what that meant until I started thinking about ending consonants. These ending consonants are so weak that we take the voice out of them, and they end up sounding like weak, unvoiced sounds. So the word is not flowers or flowers, but flowers. A weak, unvoiced consonant. Let's look at a few more words. Dive. It's really a very weak F. It's not dive or dife, but dive. Garage. It's a very weak, unvoiced sh sound. It's not garage or garage, but garage. Badge. Very weak, unvoiced sound, not batch or badge, but badge. Weakening these ending voiced consonants can help you say the words more easily and more naturally. Let's study the word badge a little further and compare it with batch. Badge. Batch. The ending of badge is weak. Badge. The ending of batch is stronger. Batch. That's not the only difference. The unvoiced ending also makes the vowel a little bit shorter. Badge. Batch. They don't sound quite the same. First of all, the ending of batch is stronger. Badge. Batch. Ch, ch, instead of ch, ch. Also, the vowel is longer on the word badge. Vowels are a little longer before voiced endings in these kinds of minimal pairs. So you have 2 clues to help you figure out which word it is: the strength of the ending and the length of the vowel. But there is a time when the weak ending gets stronger. Do you know when that is? It's when we link it to a word that begins with a vowel or diphthong. In a consonant to vowel link, it helps to think of the ending consonant as beginning the next word. So if you think of it as a beginning consonant, then it gets much stronger. Let's go back to the word flowers and put it in a phrase. Flowers on the table. Flowers on. Flowers on. Now I'm hearing a little bit more of a clear Z sound. Zon, zon, zon. Flowers on. It's stronger than when the word was at the end of a sentence. I love flowers. Flowers on. Z, z, z. So if the ending, weak voiced consonant, links into a vowel, it's not really that weak anymore. This topic was pretty advanced, so if you don't understand, don't worry. If you do, think of lightening ending voiced consonants and see if that helps make the pronunciation of these words easier. If there's a word or phrase you'd like help pronouncing, please put it in the comments below. Also, I'm very...
Yep, she's talking about her book. So, she has all kinds of videos that deal with this topic. So if you come across one that you're unsure about,
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät des Überlebensradar.
That's true.
that's German. This is a funny video. Gosh dang it. Somebody know why this doesn't work very well anymore? There we go. Okay. So, why is, again, the pronunciation.
Das hier ist mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät des Überlebensradar.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Yeah, over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
So again, knowing the difference. All right. These are fantastic resources for practicing. Again, this is Rachel's English. That's when we were on. This one is kind of a mixed bag. It's cool to look and listen. You can listen to people with certain accents speak. So if there's any particular accent that you're incredibly interested in learning more about, there's a bunch.
Swiss German, that one's hard.
Let's see, German.
Swiss German,
Ooh, where's it at? Over here.
on the right, under Swedish.
So you can pick, they've recorded all these people, and so each one, when you find, so it'll give you some biographical data. So they came over, they learned English at 10, now they're 21, and so there's this, that they, the script that they read, and then they have phonetically transcribed that allows them to hear their, see their mistakes, I guess.
Please, Christian. I was going to bring these things with her from the store: 6 pots of snow peas, 5 thick slabs of blue cheese, and maybe a snack for her brother Bob. We also need a small plastic snack and a big toy frog for the kids. She can scoop these things into 3 bags, and we will go meet her Wednesday at the train station.
So again, what I like about this is that you can see how it's been transcribed. They do not use the same phonetic chart as we do. It is not IPA, but it's still, I mean, you can interpret it. But it's it is a great way for you to practice the transcribing of the phonetics, but it's also really good for recognizing what, again, we talked about this phonetics, and being able to recognize common mistakes with certain languages. So of course, with ours, our students being predominantly Spanish speakers, I did find for our other students, there is Swahili, there is Vietnamese, there is
Nicaragua Creole. Nicaragua.
Yeah, there's a lot of different Creole. I've never heard of someone who speaks Nicaraguan Creole, but and there's languages in here I've of course never heard of. I know we've got a student who just immigrated from Ghana. He speaks Twi. So again, being able to listen and recognize, they haven't transcribed, there's no transcription yet, but it still gives you.
Please call Stella. Ask her to bring these things with her from the store: 6 spoons of fresh nut peas, 5 thick slabs of blue cheese, and maybe a snack for her brother Bob.
Now, one of the things that I've noticed a lot, and it doesn't really matter which language that you're looking at, but the sound, many times they will make that d sound for like brother, and it's in Spanish. I list about 5 different languages that, excuse me, from sort of just random languages, and you hear that. That is a common, right? The duh sound, the stop. They're putting this right, the stop in the wrong place. So that's this. Again, being able to listen to different, and that's one of the things that you'll be doing on the practice is listening to speakers and being able to identify. This is kind of cool as well. This is more giving you suggestions on how to recognize different issues. So there's some language specific. I don't know anybody that actually thinks that all words that sound the same mean the same. I think that, so like it talks about, for example, yeah. So the problem is library. When you hear library, and if you say the word library to a Spanish speaker, they're gonna know that it has something to do with books. But the word that we use for library actually translates more into bookstore, where the word biblioteca means library. Again, you still have the same root. But again, making sure that you're using, and if it's a cognate and it's similar, you can assume that there's probably something, you have a common ground, but don't just assume that it means the same thing. Because I always wait for them to say, oh yeah, it means the same thing. And half the time it's just a pronunciation thing when it's a cognate. But there are words that do not mean the same thing. So these are false cognates. But there's Spanish, French, Russian, Polish, a whole bunch of different things. So if you have a student and they're struggling with something specific, this would be a good website to be able to go to, practicing how adjectives and adverbs, capitalization, when to capitalize. So that's the Wadsworth website. I tried to get these, none of these would open. Maybe you guys will have better luck. And maybe if you open it from a not school computer, it would work better. I don't know if it's being blocked. So I'm not totally sure what those are. But I did go through all these, and there's lots of good resources. Okay, this is in your text. We won't spend a whole lot of time. We covered this last semester in methods. Basically pages 120 through 123 covers, okay, these are the different methods that we've looked at. Make sure that you're comfortable with the ALM, the audiolingual method, which is specifically on page 121. It's going to, and then goes into the contrastive analysis. Oh, yeah, I guess I did page numbers on that. Okay. Questions about, these are just the methods that we talked about last semester. You know, this is the academic, we practice the SIOP method, which is what, right, once you move out of a newcomer's class, that's when you start moving into this CALIS and SIOP method. Stages of English acquisition. Builds on, right, the natural approach, where, you know, we had the pre-production, the production, the early production, intermediate fluency. So we have the pre-systematic, learning sounds and individual words, but not overall patterns. So this is where they can communicate, but they're not creating sentences. They don't really have any sort of pattern. They don't know any rules or anything like that. Transfer, they treat the L2 sound systematically equal to the sounds in L1. So, right, that's when they're getting the duh and the confused, or the v and the w confused. An approximative, realize L2 sounds not equal to L1, begin to reconstruct or restruct L2 sounds in a new system. Most of our, right, here's our newcomers, our transferring, transitional kids, and our LTELs. Implications for teaching. The emphasis now is more on the importance of teacher knowledge than on direct teaching. It's knowing. What do you know that you, because guys, it's all about scaffolding for them and giving them what they need. There is no one thing that you're going to be able to apply and it's going to fit them all. We're seeing that especially now, you know, that we've got so many students from so many different places that speak so many different languages. It is important for teachers to understand the aspects of the learner's first language. The more that you know, that's why these resources are really good. The more that you know about their language and why they do what they do or they say what they say. And teachers predict the way the students may pronounce English words. You can recognize that if they're saying it incorrectly, what they actually mean. If they're saying it so differently that you don't even understand what they're saying, I guess. If pronunciation impedes communication, create a language objective to address the issue. So if you have a student who is consistently missaying or mispronouncing a word, how can you help them to, in a way that, you know, it could be a learning opportunity for everyone, but how can you teach them so that the word, so that they're not mispronouncing it, right? And saying sheet all the time. Or shit when they need to say sheet. Get a shit of paper. Then everyone giggles, okay? On page 123, it talks a little bit about tongue twisters, songs, chants, poems, songs. Miss Serna, our secretary for our ESOL department, says she always says that music. She always has music playing in her office, and it's always like, oh, it's like 80s and 90s music, and she will tell you, she goes, that's how I learned English. She goes, and she'll sing along, and she's like, I can sing in English much better than I can talk in English, or she could sing in English much earlier than she could speak in English. You know, they say watching shows like Friends, shows that sort of have long runs, that the kids can watch them and they can get into the rhythm of or the patterns of how they speak. But they're really, really good practice because you have to almost retrain your tongue to say things differently, right? Some sounds may improve only over time, and they may never. They may never lose that lisp. They may never actually say the J. I have a friend whose mother-in-law speaks a little bit of English, but she's like, she goes, I will always be Yuli. She says, I will never be Julie. I will always be Yuli. She goes, it doesn't matter, because that's just a sound that she struggles with. You know, our students don't want to be different, so they're probably more likely to pick up those more subtle nuances and recognize when they're not saying something correctly.
Random question.
Yeah.
I used to tell kids, because I had no like ESL background when I taught Carroll, but I had a bunch of, they were bringing in foreign exchange students left and right to get more money. But I used to tell them, like, go home and watch TV with the
captions?
Yeah. Is that good?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, it's good practice for you guys, too. My favorite show right now is House of Flowers. It's like a novella, but, I mean, it's a novella. I don't know what I'm saying, but it's all in Spanish. Put the captions on and watch. We watched Narcos, which is 90% Spanish. I watched another one called, it was like a campy, like sci-fi show, all in Spanish. I watched The Rain, which is in Swedish. Is that a language? I think it's set in Sweden. Oh, and there's another one called The Dark. I think it's set in Germany. So yeah, go watch them. You're not going to learn the language, but it does definitely help you. Number one, understand what the students struggle with. Being able to sort of keep up. Yeah, absolutely. And I think for some of them, as they're learning English, it helps to sort of cement what they already know.
Well, and I was like, see the written, if you can see the written while you're watching,
yeah,
like while you're listening to it.
Yes. Because so oftentimes, though, that, you know, I could be listening to someone like Sophia or whatever her name is.
Vergara.
Yeah. I almost have to have captions on when she speaks, and she's speaking in English, just because her accent, and she speaks very fast. So for some of them, it would be helpful just to have, to be able, like you said, to hear, oh, that's another way that you might be able to pronounce that word, almost. So, and I've been struggling with we've got 2 new refugees. They speak very quietly. One's from Ghana, he speaks Twi, and then Gile, we were talking about him, he speaks Swahili. They have very low voices. I don't hear very well to begin with, but their voices are very deep. And then they speak quietly, and then they speak really fast. So their English, to me, I almost don't recognize it as English sometimes if I'm not paying really close attention.
That sounds like my 3-year-old.
Yeah. Socio-psycholinguistic view of reading says readers use background knowledge. So, this is something we struggle with just with our staff. If you don't know what their background knowledge is, you are either starting with a big gap or you could be overlapping with what they already know. And we know that we don't have a lot of extra time in our semester to go back and cover stuff that they already know if it's not needful. If it's something we need to review, then we should review it. But if it's something that they know, use that to build their language, but we can also move on. We can build on what they already know. Page 139, at the top, graphophonics, syntax, and semantics. Are materials authentic? Authentic materials are written to inform or entertain, not to teach a grammar point or a letter-sound correspondence. And I don't know, I guess if you can find a really good one, you might be able to do more than that. But when they're reading, are you giving them something that's authentic to read, or is it something that you're trying to give them to introduce them to a new grammatical rule? Are materials predictable? Is there a good text-picture match? A good match provides non-linguistic visual cues. Is the placement of the picture predictable? So yeah, I love how some of our textbooks will put like a story, but the story doesn't really go with anything until like 3 pages later. Are the materials interesting or imaginative? Do situation characters in the book represent the experiences and backgrounds of the students in the class? Culturally relevant texts engage students. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes they don't care what you give them. Okay. What's the word? So, I skipped something really. I was going so fast. No, okay. So, guess the word. Sorry, now that you've seen them all. So, cat. What words start with the k sound? Cat, scent, cam, camel,
Cinnamon.
Situation.
And citation.
Or citation, sorry. Yeah, that would start with an S. City.
Circle.
Circus. Where the rest of the word went.
Coat.
There we go. Cook.
Coat.
I don't know. I feel like maybe this was made. There we go. Cook. Coat. The PowerPoint wasn't cooperating. So, look at all the different ways that a C, look at all the different sounds a C can make. That's where we were going with that, right? Cat. So if you were applying the same rule, right, so is this Kent? Scent, what? Why doesn't it spelled with an S? So by that measure, is this one going to be?
Spelled with an S, because scent.
Yeah, but it has a different meaning, right?
Right.
So now we have, based on that, so is this Sam?
Sammy?
Sammy? Samel? Oh, no, we're going back to the camel. Sit. Oh, it's on a timer.
Huh.
Yeah.
Notations.
So citation. So city? No. City. So what rule do you teach them to, right? Every time you add a vowel, it has a different sound. And even when you add the same vowel, it has a different sound. So city. So this is circus? No. Circus. So this one's really confusing, right? So you tell them that Y can also be used as a what?
I.
Could be I as a vowel. So don't we teach them that vowel, consonant, vowel makes this vowel long? Right? Citation. Wouldn't this be camel? So why is this A not long? Cook. Right, this is what you would see on Facebook. And then it would say, only 1 out of 100 people could read this.
When students come over, like in higher grades, like middle school or high school, do they get decoding at all? Like in elementary, they teach decoding. Like if you were looking at the last thing, it's like a VCE word, a vowel, consonant, vowel. The E would like make it say. Do they get that for English? No.
Do you guys do that in high school, Lisa, for English? It talks about it in this, I think, in this chapter 5, and it gives you all the different ways. Yeah, vowel, 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 or consonant, 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 vowel, consonant, consonant. Yeah.
Do you know if they do it in like newcomers programs at all, or?
We don't.
Yeah.
Not well. I don't teach English. I don't teach literacy, so I teach social studies. But no. So complete the sentence. Once upon a
time,
a boy Flossie met a really cute girl Flossie. The two Flossies began to chark. They were happily charking when another Flossie came by. The Flossies stopped for a moment to watch the new Flossie. After she left, the Flossies began to chark again. So even, right, so there's a pattern. Even with, even without with the words not making any sense, right? There's no such thing as a Flossie, right? I always use the word when we talk about history. We'll talk about widgets. When we're talking, I said, well, they invented this new widget, and of course they all want to stop you and ask, what's a widget? I'm like, it's nothing. It's a made-up word. It's just so I'm filling in a space, right? And so your brain wants to do this, and so you pick up on the clues, and you pick up on those grammatical rules, right? When you add ing, when you add er, when you change the y to ies, I guess. Psycholinguistic versus cognitive psychology. Okay. I got sidetracked. I don't think I finished tabbing these. Sorry. Background knowledge. Okay, so the page numbers are all wonkadoodle. Page for the Graphonics is actually 136, not 139. I knew when I started reading that it seemed wrong. Graphonics are subconscious, acquired in the process of reading and being read to. So, right, have you ever sat down with a little kid? I have a picture of my cousin's daughter reading a book to my son. And I come around the corner, she's sitting on my bed and she's reading to him, and she's like 4 and my son was 2, maybe a year and a half. And she was reading the story of Where the Wild Things Are. And I'm like blown away because she's reading the book. And I'm like, she's a freaking genius. She's reading this book.
Yeah.
I come around the corner and I'm kind of peeking over her shoulder and I'm just like, oh, that's so freaking cute, right? She's reading. I'm like ready to call my cousins and tell them, your daughter's a genius. She can read. And it came to I figured out very quickly that she had been read to so many times that she knew how the story went. And she knew how to pick up on certain words, right? Over the things and for, however many years he travels. And where the wild things are. And so she had been read this story so many times that she picked up on it and she could actually recite it for almost she knew exactly what was on each page. So she picks up on these, whether she knew she was doing it or not, because she was now being the big kid and she was reading the story. One of 3 sources of information are used to construct meaning. Again, that's this concept of graphonics, the syntax and semantics. A result of reading that develops through engagement with texts that have characteristics that support reading. Can only be assessed in the context of meaningful reading. So the idea is you have to give them something that they're interested in to be able to test how well they read. Giving them, I think, a random text, like we do when we give them they used to be the maze. Right? You're asking them to read something that it's not authentic. They have no skin in that particular game, other than somebody told them that they have to read it and read it as well as they can and so fast, and that gives them a score, and that score determines what their literacy class is. Cognitive psychology 4-part processing model. Where you focus on context, meaning, phonological, and orthographic processors. Four-part processing model. Okay, so what does this look like? My screen looks completely different from yours. I don't know what this is. This is what my screen looks like. I've never actually thrown it up on the presenter to see what it looked like, and for whatever reason, this is what I get and that's what you get. So I'm not entirely, this 4-part processing model. I just don't know why it looks like
I
that.
downloaded it like semester, and mine looks like yours.
With the other screen?
Yeah.
Okay. This is kind of cool, but I'm like, I don't remember seeing this, so I'm trying to figure out how it all goes together. This slide builds upon itself to show how learning to decode without paying attention to vocabulary and comprehension for ELs is a disservice. ELs need a language-rich learning environment where they are exposed to many concepts and content, vocabulary, varieties of authentic text, with many opportunities to practice meaningful, authentic language. I mean, that really comes back to the whole idea of just talking. So, if you want to take a picture of this, I don't even know if you download it, if you would get this. So, so the phonological processor, this is your speaking, this is your reading, recognizing that you have to build on your vocabulary, and then your output, context processor, and your meaning processor. So having context, I guess that's your background, concepts and information, sentence context, text structure, context processor, and your meaning processor. So what's it about and what do you understand? And then you have orthographic and phonological processors. I mean, that's just your language, and that's your spoken and your written. Oh, there you go. Oh, there it is. Very interesting. Guess I should have just played through it. Ah, okay. So this is your phonemes versus your alphabet. And then this is making sense of it, right? Cool. All right. Teachers with an understanding of phonology can evaluate methods of teaching a second language and reading. Learning views versus acquisition, 28 through 40, 140. Let me make sure the page numbers are still correct. It's got me questioning everything now.
Is this supposed to be all of chapter 5? Or just part?
Well, it's just like a random chunk of it, but it's not. This doesn't really have anything to do with acquisition versus learning view.
It does in the beginning.
If you start there, it does?
Yeah.
For chapter 5?
Because like 120 is phonology and methods with the learning view.
Right.
So I'm guessing it's just supposed to be all of chapter 5. And then 134 is acquisition.
Okay.
But then,
yeah, the page numbers are just wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's really 120 through
145.
Phonology and methods with acquisition view. Phonology and reading. Okay. Reading and acquisition. Yep. 144. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this is your position statement. This is due. Today is the 4th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Disregard the due week 6.
So this is the National Literacy Panel report that you printed out for?
Yeah, I printed out the two ones that you needed. The rebuttal to Freeman is that one that looks like an article that's been copied, or a book page that's been, and the National Literacy Report is the front and back. And then you have, oh, is that what you were talking about, Lauren, the question?
Yeah.
Is it posed as a question? Find my article.
Yeah, it is.
Are they posed as questions, like all the
Why
different
has
ones?
the acquisition of English by non-English speaking children not been more universally
Okay.
successful?
So for that, yes. Is that the only one? Is that the one you were talking about?
I was just confused on like, I understand what I was supposed to do, but I thought assistance and
It's the Eric Digest article, right?
Yeah. The Fillmore one. Sorry, come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so. I guess the position statement must have been at one of those things I added and I didn't catch. So next week on the 8th, or after spring break on the 18th, you have the Essential Linguistics, Chapter 7, question number 1, only 30 words. Will be due on 4/1. Oh wait, this is 3/4, sorry. Yeah, position statement, and it says due week 6, it's actually due next week. Because we technically only have, right? I don't see it anywhere else on here.
It says the due date is 3/18 next to it.
On there?
So, yeah.
Did I actually put it on there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I just don't have it as being due that day, do I? I missed that. If you look in week 3/18, E, it says complete the position. It's actually just due that day. Sorry, I didn't get all those weeks off there. I don't know how to.
Is the spelling investigation still on the site?
Which one?
It says spelling
Investigation on Moodle. Well, let's just look. Is that a new one from the first syllabus?
Yeah.
I kind of did.
Okay.
By this Friday, kind of
Yeah.
have stuff set.
I was like, I hope I'm not being too bossy, but nobody said anything, so. It's like it's.
Yep, and spelling investigations right there. It's not due until.
It says 3/18 on the syllabus.
Yep, after spring break. Is that all? Let's go back here. Because there's nothing in your syllabus about it, so. I'm assuming it's in the handouts folder. Yep, there it is. Oh, it's the one I gave you last week. Sorry. I did give you the assignment, I just forgot we didn't cover it.
Oh.
Oh, so we turn that in?
Yeah. You do now. Yeah, this was not on the original syllabus. I made the copies for you because it was in the handout folder, but
when is that due?
Next Thursday, next Monday, after spring break. And then, so the 318, and then 4-1 will be our last regular class. 4:15 will be our presentations. And then 4:29 is your final. Online, I'll release it. As soon as they release it to me, I'll release it to you guys. Cool. Okay. All right. Oh, history of English and orthography. Orthography? Orthography. Indo-European family began as a Germanic, 70% Latin based. Oh, that was interesting. I thought it was more than that, but additional influences from other languages. If you speak a Romantic language, you have an advantage to learning English.
The History of English in 10 minutes. Chapter 1, Anglo-Saxon, or whatever happened to the Jutes. The English language begins with the phrase, up yours, Caesar, as the Romans leave Britain, and a lot of Germanic tribes start flooding in. Tribes such as the Angles and the Saxons, who together gave us the term Anglo-Saxon, and the Jutes didn't. The Romans left some very straight roads behind, but not much of their Latin language. The Anglo-Saxon vocab was much more useful, as it was mainly words for simple, everyday things like house, woman, loaf, and grill. 4 of our days of the week were named in honor of Anglo-Saxon gods. They didn't bother with Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, as they'd all gone off for a long weekend. While they were away, Christian missionaries stole in, bringing with them leaflets about jumble sales and Latin. Christianity was a hit with the locals, and made them much happy to take on funky new words from Latin, like martyr, bishop, font. Along came the Vikings, with their action-man words like drag, ransack, thrust, and die. They may have raped and pillaged, but they were also into give and take. To of around 2,000 words they gave English, as well as the phrase, watch out for that man with the enormous axe. Chapter 2, The Norman Conquest, or Excuse My English. 1066. True to his name, William the Conqueror invades England, bringing new concepts from across the Channel like the French language, the Doomsday Book, and the duty-free Gaulois multipack. French was de rigueur for all official business, with words like judge, jury, evidence, and justice coming in and giving John Grisham's career a kick-start. Latin was still used ad nauseam in church, but the common man spoke English, able to communicate only by speaking more slowly and loudly until the others understood him. Words like cow, sheep, and swine come from the English-speaking farmers, while the a la carte versions, beef, mutton, and pork, come from the French-speaking tops, beginning a long-running trend for restaurants having completely indecipherable menus. All in all, the English absorbed about 10,000 new words from the Normans, though they still couldn't grasp the rules of cheek kissing. The bonhomie all ended when the English nation took their new warlike lingo of armies, navies, and soldiers and began the 100 Years' War against France. It actually lasted 116 years, but by that point no one could count any higher in French, and English took over as the language of power. Chapter 3, Shakespeare, or a plaque on both his houses. As the dictionary tells us, about 2,000 new words and phrases were invented by William Shakespeare. He gave us handy words like eyeball, puppy dog, and anchovy, and more show-offy words like dauntless, besmirch, and lackluster. He came up with the word alligator, soon after he ran out of things to rhyme with crocodile. And a nation of tea drinkers finally took him to their hearts when he invented the hobnob. Shakespeare knew the power of catchphrases as well as biscuits. Without him, we'd never eat our flesh and blood out of house and home. We'd have to say good riddance to the green-eyed monster, and breaking the ice would be as dead as a doornail. If you tried to get your money's worth, you'd be given short shrift, and anyone who laid it on with a trowel could be pushed with his own petard. Of course, it's possible other people used these words first, but the dictionary writers liked looking them up in Shakespeare because there was more cross-dressing and people poking each other's eyes out. Shakespeare's poetry showed the world that English was a rich, vibrant language with limitless expressive and emotional power, and he still had time to open all those tea rooms in Stratford. Chapter 4, the King James Bible, or Let There Be Light Reading. In 1611, the powers that be turned the world upside down with a labour of love, a new translation of the Bible. A team of scribes with the wisdom of Solomon went the extra mile to make King James translation all things to all men, whether from their heart's desire to fight the good fight, or just for the sake.
There's actually a really
This
interesting
sexy new Bible went from strength to
documentary
strength,
about that,
getting to the root
and
of
why
the
they
matter
call it
in a language
a
even the
translation
salt of
and
the
not a
earth could understand.
transcription.
The writing wasn't on
You
the
go to
wall, it was
Bible
imprinted in the
college,
books,
you
with
learn
fire
that.
and brimstone preachers reading it in every church, its words and phrases to root to the ends of the earth, or at least the ends of Britain. The King James Bible is the book that taught us that a leopard can't change its spots, that a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, that a wolf in sheep's clothing is harder to spot than you would imagine, and how annoying it is to have a